My sister Yvonne and I were promised in marriage on the same day. She reached for the powerful general's household. I was left with the so-called poor scholar. No one could have predicted how disastrously that choice would age. On the very day Yvonne entered the Hale family, the young general died in battle. And the poor scholar, Mercer, swept every imperial examination afterward. His future blazed bright. Yvonne spent 2 miserable years in the general's estate, begging to come home. Our father, who had always adored her, slapped her and said she could die there if she wished, but she would never set foot in our house again. That broke her. When I visited her, she drove a golden hairpin straight into my chest. And when I opened my eyes again, we were both back on the day we received our coming-of-age tokens, the day our marriages were meant to be decided. This time, Yvonne lunged for the scholar's token first. I laughed. A life of comfort, no household duties, servants waiting at your call. And my sister didn't want it? Chapter 1. The moment Yvonne snatched up the Mercer family's token, I knew it. She had been reborn too. In our last life, she had grabbed the Hale family's jade pendant without a second thought and tossed the scholar's sachet at me. "Little sister," she had said, "I'm really thinking of you. The second son of the Hales isn't the heir, but he's still legitimate. If you marry him, you'll never have a peaceful day. The scholar suits you better." In this life, her tone was just as lofty. "Gwen, the Mercers are poor. I've always cared about you. Let me give you the marriage into the Hales instead." Lady Arden dropped her teacup in shock. "Yvonne." Yvonne clutched the sachet and bent to whisper in her ear. Lady Arden's expression slowly smoothed out, though the worry stayed in her eyes. "Yvonne, have you really thought this through? If anything goes wrong..." "If anything goes wrong, Mother, you'll be there for me," Yvonne said sweetly, resting her head on her shoulder. After a long pause, Lady Arden gritted her teeth. "Fine. I'll agree." And just like that, our marriages were set again. When the dowries were prepared, Lady Arden used the excuse that the Hales are wealthy and the Mercers are poor to shave down my already modest dowry and add the difference to Yvonne's. I didn't care. They were right. The Hales were rich. As for House Mercer, I wondered if Yvonne's 10 miles of bridal chests would be enough to fill their endless greed. It had been the same way in my last life. Lady Arden laid out both tokens and told us to choose. But I had never truly had a choice. Yvonne took the jade pendant. The sachet slid to a stop in front of me. She married into the general's estate, red silk stretching 10 miles behind her. I entered House Mercer in a small, plain sedan chair. Our fates were supposed to mirror our births. She, the noble wife of a titled man. I, the quiet wife of a minor scholar. Instead, on Yvonne's wedding day, Adrian Hale was summoned to the front with his father and brother. Every adult man in the Hale family died in that campaign. 3 months after the wedding, Yvonne was a widow. She cried for days, begged to come home, threatened to kill herself. Lady Arden coaxed her, promising that if she completed 3 full years of mourning for Adrian, she would find a way to bring her back. Even I knew it was a lie. The Hales were famed for their loyalty. If my father dared take a Hale widow home, his colleagues would spit on his name. And my elder brother had just entered court the previous year. His future depended on a spotless reputation. He loved Yvonne, but not more than his career. So Yvonne stayed in the general's estate for another 2 years. She tried to hurt herself over and over. In the end, the Hale matriarch, Grand Madame Hale, the emperor's own aunt, summoned my father and Lady Arden, pointed straight at Yvonne, and said, "Take her back. She's wasting her youth here." My father was terrified. Back home, he slapped Yvonne and snarled, "Yvonne Arden, even if you die, you'll die in the general's estate." Yvonne refused to accept it. Especially after she heard that Mercer, my husband, had been appointed imperial lecturer, a prize any scholar would kill for. She demanded to see me. Lady Arden came herself to invite me to comfort her. I had no way to refuse. I paid my respects to Grand Madame Hale first. She held my hand and sighed. "Talk to your sister. I wanted to let her return home, but your father..." She patted my fingers gently. "He is too cautious for his own good." On the way to Yvonne's courtyard, I couldn't help thinking, with a powerful, kind elder like Grand Madame Hale on her side, what more could Yvonne want? If the elders of House Mercer had been even half as gracious, I would have woken up laughing from my dreams. But Yvonne had replayed the day of our marriage choices again and again, until she went mad. She was the legitimate daughter. She was the one who should have had a title and a life of luxury. Blinded by that resentment, she drove a golden hairpin into my chest and then killed herself. So when she realized she'd gone back in time, she seized the Mercer match first. Fine, let her. This time, the easy, pampered life would be mine. The third day of the 9th month was chosen as the wedding day for both daughters of House Arden. The date had originally been selected for Yvonne alone, but she pestered Lady Arden until she agreed to marry us off on the same day, so she wouldn't have to enter the Hale family after Adrian left for the front. I was carried into the general's estate in a lively procession of drums and firecrackers. Before I even finished bowing to my new elders, the thunder of hooves crashed through the vermilion gates. Maids moved with the calm, quick rhythm of people used to emergencies, following the gentle instructions of an older attendant as they guided me into the bridal chamber. A short while later, a pair of black boots stopped in front of me. "Gwen," a man's voice said, "I've received an urgent summons. I have to leave at once." The round fan in front of my face lifted. A young man in gleaming armor stood before me. Guilt flickered in his eyes. "I'm sorry." I stared. So this was Adrian Hale. I hadn't expected him to be that handsome. "My lord." I tossed the fan aside, waved the maids out, and took the talisman I'd hidden away. "My lord, last night I had a dream," I said. "I dreamed you were summoned to the Northern Front on your wedding day. The supervising officer wanted all the glory and ordered you and your uncle to pursue the enemy. You were ambushed, gravely injured. Snow buried the roads. The supply lines broke." Shock flashed in Adrian's gaze, then slowly hardened into something darker and more serious. The Northern campaign was top secret. A sheltered bride like me should have known nothing. I pressed the talisman into his hand. "My lord, I don't understand war. I thought it was just a nightmare. But now, please be careful. I'll wait here for your victory." Adrian didn't answer. The talisman trembled slightly in his palm as my hand shook. I could have said nothing. I could have let the Hales die on the battlefield. As a general's widow, I would have been cherished by the matriarch, respected by my father and Lady Arden, maybe even granted a title by the emperor. A quiet, honored widowhood would have been very comfortable. But I had grown up on stories of the Hale Legion. My mother's family had once survived a southern raid only because the old General Hale had saved them. Aunt Lynn used to pat my back and tell me Hale war stories until I fell asleep. I, Gwen Arden, was only a concubine-born daughter, small, cautious, always careful. But I knew what it meant to have a conscience. I couldn't bear to watch the matriarch, who had quietly added 2 extra chests to my dowry, lose her sons and grandsons overnight. I couldn't bear the thought of the little boy who'd tugged my sleeve and called me auntie, growing up without a father. And I couldn't bear the idea of tens of thousands of soldiers dying when I might have stopped it. After a long silence, Adrian's large, steady hand closed around the talisman. "Thank you," he said. Once Adrian rode out to war, I didn't just sit and wait. My mother's family had businesses all over the empire and several shops in Silvercrest. I took the token Aunt Lynn had left me and sent a message to the nearest sun shop, asking my grandfather to send someone he trusted. I expected to wait days. Instead, a young woman arrived the very next morning. "I am Nora Sun, eldest daughter of the Sun family," she said. She wore men's clothes, but she wasn't pretending to be a man. She simply bowed with practiced ease. "I run all of the Sun businesses in Silvercrest. If you trust me, Lady Hale, just tell me what you need." My eyes brightened. So she was already in charge of their Silvercrest holdings at this point. In my last life, I met her once. That was in my 3rd year of marriage to Ian. One of my maids had pawned a bracelet. Nora recognized it as part of the dowry her family had sent with me. She came to my door with a stack of banknotes and asked if I was in trouble. Before I could make up an excuse, Madame Mercer burst in and scolded me for dealing with merchants. Nora left in anger, but still tucked the notes under the tea tray before going. I handed the money back in front of Madame Mercer. "Mother is right. A Mercer wife can't use merchant silver." At the time, Ian had just been appointed imperial lecturer and needed money to grease the right palms. His younger sister had secured a good engagement and needed a stunning dowry. Even so, I turned the help away. Madame Mercer smashed a teacup on my head and made me serve her all night as punishment. After that, I never dared ask Nora for anything again. Grand Madame Hale was different. When I mentioned that Aunt Lynn had come from the Sun family, she laughed and praised the quality of their jewelry, insisting she would take me to pick out a few pieces herself. Remembering all that, I bent in a deep bow. "Cousin," I said, "please help me." Nora and I talked for half an hour. When she left, she was carrying a money chest. "Gwen, are you sure?" she asked. "This is everything you have," I nodded. The moment I warned Adrian, I'd already pushed all my chips into the center of the table. If I was going to gamble, I might as well go all in. "General Hale once saved my family's lives," Nora said, her voice firm. "Trust me, I won't fail you." There was respect in her eyes now. I saw her off, then climbed into a carriage back to House Arden. It was the day I was supposed to return home as a newlywed. Grand Madame Hale had prepared an extravagant set of gifts for me. "My dear little sister is truly a noble lady now, returning at such a late hour," Yvonne said. Jealousy flashed in her eyes at the heaps of gifts stacked outside the hall, but pride quickly smoothed her face. "Well, it's not your fault. Adrian rode back to the battlefield on your wedding night. You probably didn't even see his face clearly. Anything can happen out there. If he..." She cut herself off and covered her mouth delicately. "Oh, that was wrong of me. Don't be angry." I smiled. "If you know you've said something wrong, shouldn't you stand up and apologize?" Her expression twisted. "Gwen Arden, just because you married into a great house, you think you're better than me?" "If you insult me, you insult the general's estate," I replied, voice cool. She froze, then jabbed a finger at me. "Look at you, so smug. Just like your mother." "Lady Mercer, watch your tongue." Before I could speak, the maid Grand Madame Hale had given me stepped forward, voice sharp as a whip. The palace sash at her waist glinted in the light. Yvonne didn't dare push it further. She only glared at me like she wanted to swallow me whole. We sat in silence for the length of a cup of tea before Father and Ian walked in. One glance at Father's pleased face told me everything. Ian had charmed him, just as he had in the last life. There weren't many men who could sweep every exam. Of course, he dazzled them. Yvonne straightened, proud again. She leaned over and whispered, "Sister, your brother-in-law is not only brilliant and handsome, he adores me. On our wedding night, he promised he'd never take a concubine." I nodded. I believed it. He had said the same thing to me in the last life. He kept that promise until I died. He simply never loved me. I looked at Yvonne and kept my silence. This time, after all, she was the one who chose him. Yvonne hated that I wouldn't rise to the bait. But Father and Ian had already taken their seats. If she pushed things now, they would hear. After Aunt Lynn's death, I had no reason to linger at House Arden. Once lunch was over, I asked to leave. Father and Lady Arden didn't try to keep me, they just had the steward see me out. Not far from the gate, a blue, curtained carriage stood still. I glanced at it. A gust of wind lifted the curtain. Inside sat a powdered young man, staring at the Arden estate with a dazed, yearning look. Interesting. I smiled and stepped into the Hale carriage. For the next 2 months, aside from meeting with Nora, I stayed by Grand Madame Hale's side. I asked her to teach me how to manage a great household. Lady Arden had never planned to marry me into a powerful clan, so she'd taught me nothing beyond sewing and basic etiquette. When I married Ian in the last life, Madame Mercer had even less to teach me. She'd clawed her way up from poverty herself. Grand Madame Hale was delighted with my request. "Good," she said. "You're not the eldest daughter-in-law, but the more you learn, the safer you'll be." She taught me alongside Fiona, Adrian's younger sister. We learned to read accounts, to manage servants, to host and to win people over. Fiona struggled. I clung to every single lesson. I studied. I asked questions. When Grand Madame Hale grew tired, my sister-in-law Evelyn had me watch her handle the estate's affairs. Fiona watched all this and whistled in awe. Soon, she dragged me to the training grounds to teach me to ride. I was happy to learn something new. To my surprise, I was good at it. After 3 days, I could ride on my own. Even Adrian's fierce warhorse calmed under my hands. Fiona grinned. "Sister Gwen, you and my brother really are fated. Even his horse likes you." Then she nudged me and asked, "Have you read my brother's letter yet?" I blinked. "I didn't get a letter." "That's impossible." Fiona yanked on her reins, turned her horse around, and practically shoved me back into my room. He wrote a whole line telling me to take good care of you. Of course he wrote to you. Sure enough, an unopened letter lay on my desk. To my wife, Gwen. Open with care. Fiona read the words on the envelope in a sing-song voice, shuddered theatrically, and stuffed it into my hands. My brother is so sappy. I'll leave you to it. She closed the door behind her. I hesitated, then broke the seal. Inside was only one line. In dreams, I saw you. I hope the dream comes true. I drew in a slow breath. He was telling me that my dream, my warning, had already come true. Chapter 2. When word reached Silvercrest that the Hale Legion was surrounded near the northern front, Yvonne Arden immediately came to comfort me. The maids told her I was heartbroken and so ill I couldn't get out of bed. She shed a few token tears in front of Grand Madame Hale, then left, looking half regretful and half secretly pleased. Fiona Hale wrote to me by carrier pigeon. Sister Gwen, I can't believe you two are real sisters. I never knew someone so vile could exist. I've learned something today. I had no ink or brush to reply. I simply folded her letter again and tied it back to the pigeon's leg. That was our way of saying we were safe. By then, I was already less than 100 miles from the northern front. The day I received Adrian's letter from the battlefield, I went to see Grand Madame Hale. I had already made my plans long ago. But if Adrian refused to believe me, there was nothing more I could do. He believed me. I gathered all my courage and stepped into the matriarch's room. In just 2 short months, I had come to see her as my own grandmother. I knelt and repeated to her everything I had told Adrian. Then I offered her his letter. Grand Madame Hale stayed silent for a long time before saying, "But if anything happens to you out there, how am I supposed to face Adrian? And how could I face your father?" I smiled and took her cold hand. "Grandmother, if I go, I share my husband's fate. Live or die," I said quietly. As for my father, he never cared whether a concubine-born daughter like me lived or died. I looked toward the window and went on. "I'm a concubine's child. My mother died early. My father and Lady Arden always treated me like an object. But after I married in, you were kind to me. Fiona was kind to me. So was Evelyn. Even the little nephew, when he went out and found some sweets he liked, never forgot to bring me one." Tears fell from the matriarch's eyes. "You foolish child, none of that is worth your life." Tears blurred my own vision. "When someone gives me even a small kindness, I should repay it with all I have," I said softly. Besides, for a ridiculous dream, Adrian risked a charge of treason by trusting me. If I shrink back now, how can I face him? How can I face the thousands of soldiers behind him? Grand Madame Hale was quiet for a long time. Then she helped me up and pressed me down onto the seat instead. To my shock, she gathered her robes and bowed to me. "Grandmother?" "Gwen," she said, holding my hand, her voice warm and steady. "If you go, you will be a benefactor of House Hale. When you return safely, I will personally ask His Majesty to grant you the title of County Lady. No one will dare bully you again, not even your father or Lady Arden. And if Adrian ever treats you poorly, I will see to your divorce myself." It was a rank of nobility, not just an honorary title. Even if Adrian and I parted ways one day, it would still be mine. "Go, Gwen," she said at last. She chose the best soldiers from her own household guard to escort me north. We joined the Sun family's merchant caravan to hide our movements. What I hadn't expected was that the caravan leader was Nora Sun herself. She was still dressed in men's clothing, crisp and sharp in the cold wind. "Without me, how did you think you were going to move the Sun caravans along your route?" she laughed. "And if this campaign succeeds, I might earn myself the rank of imperial merchant. When that happens, you'd better speak a good word for me, Lady Hale." We looked at each other and smiled. "I will," I said. We headed north through fog, snow, and ice, the land stretching out in a sheet of silver. At every stage, more Sun caravans joined us with supplies. By the time we neared the fortress, our line of wagons was so long we could no longer see the end. The road grew worse. It took us 4 whole days to cover the last 100 miles. In the end, the wheels sank deep into the snow and refused to move. Switched to sleds. The Hale guards and the Sun guards passed my order down the line. The carriages we'd brought from Silvercrest had been specially modified. When the undercarriages were detached, they became wooden sleds that could glide over snow. The guards hitched the sleds to the horses. But the sleds couldn't carry as much as a wagon, and there were fewer of them. If we wanted to move every sack of grain, we would need to make 7 or 8 trips. For this last stretch of the journey, it was the only way. We had also brought Adrian's warhorse. It had been restless since we entered the deep snow. All I could do was stroke its mane over and over, whispering to calm it. Nora came over and handed me a piece of dried venison cake. "Eat something." I thanked her and reached out to take it, when a shadow lunged at me. Thankfully, one of the Hale guards stood close at all times. His blade flashed down. The man's hand fell into the snow. He collapsed, screaming. Only then did I see that he was a bony, half-starved refugee. A cold wind howled. Soft sobs drifted to us through the bare trees. I turned and saw them, thin figures, men and women both, shivering in the brush. Nora sighed and said quietly, "The city must be in a bad way too." I turned to the captain at my side. "Do we have any food to spare?" "We do," he said. "But even if you feed them, they won't survive the winter, and refugees are hard to control. If they harm you—" I shook my head and cut him off. "There are only a dozen of them. After what just happened, they won't dare try anything." I looked at the starving faces and added, "Give them some food. Even one more day alive is still another day." The captain couldn't win the argument. He ordered some rations thrown their way. Once all 30 sleds were loaded, I mounted Adrian's horse. Nora stayed with the rest of the caravan, waiting for us to send the empty sleds back. We had already decided this together, and this was the reason I had come in person. The older Hale men had gone to war with Adrian. The guards left behind in the general's estate were not his own subordinates. Right now, the only people close enough to the heavily guarded fortress were those of House Hale. Grandmadam Hale was too old. Evelyn had a newborn to nurse. Fiona was still unmarried. That left me, the new bride, as the only choice. It took another hour to travel that last stretch. The world was a vast blur of white. There seemed to be no end to it. Even wrapped in the finest fox fur cloak and the warmest sheepskin boots, I was shaking in the wind. My skin was raw from the cold, my fingers red and swollen with frostbite. Pain shot through my arms and legs. I leaned over the horse's neck and repeated to myself again and again, "Gwen Arden, this is the last part of the road. After this, no one will decide your life for you again. No one will despise you because your mother was a merchant's daughter. No one will belittle you because you were born concubine-born." The world had given me chains. I would break every single one. That thought kept my frail body moving. In the wind and snow, I pushed forward. One step, then another. "Second lady." The captain's shout was a mix of surprise and joy. "We're here." I pulled back my hood and looked up. Under a sky of leaden clouds, towering walls rose from the snow, like a black dragon lying across the land. Only the red banners atop the ramparts snapped in the wind. An arrow sliced past the horse's head. "Who goes there?" I took the banner from the captain, unfurled it, and raised it high. It was the same banner that flew on the walls. "I am Gwen Arden, wife of Adrian Hale." The soldiers on the walls looked at each other, bows still drawn. I stroked the horse's mane to calm it. "Send my husband Adrian down," I called. "I will wait here." A centurion's head disappeared from the battlements. I wrapped my cloak tighter, but did not pull my hood back up. The wind stung my face like knives. At last, a young man in armor appeared on the wall. He looked down. I looked up. We met each other's gaze through the storm. My fingers tightened on the reins. Just as I could not be sure the man above was really my husband, he might not recognize the woman outside the gate. If they drove me off, I could accept that. If they shot me down, I could not. Open the gate. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Only then did I notice that my sheepskin gloves were worn through, and the reins had cut a bloody line across my palm. Adrian came down the steps in long, steady strides. "What are you doing here?" he asked, taking the reins from my hands. He looked at my pale face. "Are you all right?" I nodded. "I brought supplies." He followed my gaze. The guards pulled back the canvas covers, revealing the sleds piled high with grain and provisions. Blizzards around Frosthold had blocked the skies. Carrier pigeons could not break through, and messengers brought only battlefield reports. He had never learned what I was doing. His eyes held shock, then something deeper. There was even a flicker of admiration. "Thank you," he said quietly. He gestured. Several soldiers came forward and began checking the sleds one by one. His gaze came back to my face. "This is procedure," he said. "Don't take it to heart. I'll help you down." I nodded. He held my arm and lifted me from the saddle. The moment my frozen feet touched the ground, sharp pain shot up my legs. I flinched and frowned. "There are 80 more sleds of supplies still trapped on the mountain road," I said. "Please send men to bring the empty sleds back. As for our guards, they are already exhausted. Let them rest." Adrian nodded. "I'll handle it. You should go inside and warm up." I didn't try to be brave. I thanked him and followed the soldiers through the gate. They led me into a large room. On the southern wall hung a suit of armor with a spear and a sword beside it. I reached out and brushed my fingers over the scars along the metal. My heart stirred. I had been away from Silvercrest so long, I'd lost track of time. One of the soldiers told me it was the 23rd day of the 12th month. In the last life, that was the day Adrian died of his wounds. At 16, he followed his father to war, leading 800 men to strike the enemy camp from behind and capturing over 2,000 foes. At 17, he was granted a minor title and led a campaign that drove the southern tribes back 300 miles. At 19, he married. Because of the supervising officer's greed for glory, he and his brother were ordered to pursue the remnants. His brother was captured. Adrian, gravely wounded, fought his way into enemy lines and brought his brother's corpse back. A rising star on the battlefield, died at Frosthold Fortress. Having lost both sons, old General Hale's hair turned white overnight, yet he never retreated. No food, no reinforcements, only hot blood, and the citizens of 13 northern cities behind him. In the end, the Hale Legion held Frosthold. The price was terrible. Most of the army fell. The commanding general died. The city lost nearly all its people. The empire mourned in white. Countless elders buried their children. This time that nightmare would remain only a nightmare. I lay back in the chair and, for the first time in days, slept peacefully. I woke when Adrian lifted me from the chair and laid me on the bed. A new brazier burned beside us, filling the room with warmth. I grabbed his arm. "My lord? You're awake." He had taken off his armor and wore only a padded undershirt. The killing aura around him had softened. When he smiled, he looked suddenly young. "Hungry?" he asked. I brought cured meat. He carefully unwrapped a paper bundle. "I had to steal this from my father's plate. With the shortage, getting meat isn't easy." My heart tightened. "Did I not bring enough food?" I blurted. I had no idea how much the army needed. I didn't dare ask grandmother for figures. I could only ask my cousin to use my entire fortune to make sleds and turn the rest into grain. Adrian's gaze shifted. He sat by the bed and cupped my cold hands in his palms. "It's not enough to win the whole war," he said. "But it's enough to keep us alive until the capital sends more supplies." I let out a long breath. "Then that's good?" Only then did I realize how close we were. Our breaths mingled, oddly warm in the dead of winter. Adrian watched me for a long moment. My cheeks grew hot. He finally sighed in frustration and muttered, "Not yet." I didn't catch it. "My lord?" "Gwen." "Rest for a few days," he said instead, "then return to the capital with the merchants." He pulled a small jar of ointment from the bedside drawer, opened my hand, and spread it carefully over the raw line in my palm. I nodded. That's what I was thinking as well. I can't help here. I'll only be a distraction. All done. He put away the ointment and tucked me under the covers. "The enemy camp isn't far. They like to launch raids at night, but don't worry, I'm here." He patted my shoulder gently, like soothing a child. "Go back to sleep." Days of traveling had stripped away all my strength. I had wanted to talk to him about the house, about Grandmadam Hale and the others. But the moment my head touched the pillow, my eyes wouldn't stay open. Just before sleep claimed me, I felt someone brush my hair aside. A quiet sigh. "You've lost weight," he murmured. We did not stay long in Frosthold. After a few days of rest, we took advantage of a break in the snow and set off again. Adrian escorted us out of the city. When we had gone some distance, Nora turned her head to look back at his figure, standing straight with a blade in hand. "My grandfather can finally rest easy now," she said. I didn't understand. She smiled. "He always felt guilty toward your mother. When our family ran into trouble, They had no choice but to marry Aunt Lynn into your father's house as a concubine. It wasn't about chasing power. By the time the business grew and prospered, she had already passed away. Nora flicked her reins and went on. I only got to manage the Silvercrest branch because of you. The family never wanted a woman in charge of the capital's trade. Grandfather defied everyone to put me there. He had only one condition, that I look after you. I thought back to the last life and finally understood. When we left the city today, Officer Hale called me cousin along with you, she added. I knew then that he would cherish you. She snapped her whip lightly. Let's go. I've been away so long, I'm afraid to see what shape my business is in. The road south was much easier. We had come laden with supply carts. We returned almost empty. The journey north had taken a month. We came back to Silvercrest in just 20 days. As soon as I stepped through the gate of the general's estate, a maid came running. Second lady, your sister is here again. So Yvonne really wouldn't stop until she got what she wanted. I changed my clothes and went to the flower hall. She did not look as radiant as when I had seen her last. I counted the days in my head. She must be running out of patience. 4 months of marriage, her handsome, brilliant husband, the top scorer of the provincial exams, burned the midnight oil every night. And in all that time, he had not once stepped over the threshold of her bridal chamber. They still had not consummated their marriage. Chapter 3. Of course, Yvonne would never pour any of this bitterness out in front of me. The moment I appeared, she straightened up again, proud and superior. She looked me over, taking in my tired face from the long journey, clearly misunderstanding the reason, and said smugly, Gwen, I heard all about what happened in the north. You don't have to grieve too much. We're sisters after all. When your brother-in-law becomes a high official, I'll ask him to look after you. Will you? I sat down and poured myself tea. Then I'll thank you in advance, sister. My retreat swept away the resentment she'd been nursing for days. She went on, just don't expect father to bring you home. The Hales are a house of loyal martyrs. Even if you die, you can only die in their estate. She sighed theatrically. Poor you. So young, and your life will wither away in this lonely garden. The Hales are wealthy. I'm not short of food or clothing, I said mildly. There's nothing wrong with staying here. I tilted my head slightly so the dangling ornaments of my hairpin caught the light. But you, sister, the Mercers live frugally. The hairpins and bracelets you're wearing all look like your old pieces. Could it be you can't afford new ones? Yvonne's face darkened. Her dowry had been generous. No matter how much she subsidized the Mercer household, she shouldn't have run out of money for jewelry in just a few months. But every time she went out to shop, Ian's younger sister insisted on tagging along. Whatever Yvonne bought, the girl wanted it too. Not just for herself, she also expected Yvonne to buy gifts for their mother. If Yvonne refused, the girl would complain to Ian. Ian cared about his reputation. He would scold his sister in front of Yvonne for trying to spend his wife's dowry. But afterward, he would look at Yvonne with wounded, disappointed eyes. Then, for several days, he wouldn't even step into her room. Eventually, Yvonne would grit her teeth, buy the jewelry, and go apologize to her mother-in-law. Only then would Ian come to her again, drawing her brows for her, sketching her portrait, writing a poem or two, coaxing her until all her anger melted away. Soon enough, Yvonne stopped buying jewelry for herself at all. She would never tell me any of this. She only ground her teeth and sneered, Wear your finery while you still can. Before long, forget hairpins. You'll be lucky if they even let you wear colors. What do you mean, sister? I asked with a smile. Her chest rose and fell with fury. She leaned close to my ear and whispered, enunciating each word. You really don't know? Adrian Hale is already dead at Frosthold Fortress. For some reason, her words annoyed me. I straightened and replied softly, And you believe a dream that easily? Did your dream also tell you why Ian Mercer still hasn't touched you? Her eyes flew wide. The war in the north was already decided. Yvonne would not be able to stir anything up now. So I didn't mind letting her know. She wasn't the only one who had been reborn. The answer is... I picked up a lock of her hair and let it slip through my fingers. I'm not telling you. You can find out on your own. Days grew longer. The wind softened. Spring crept into the city. Fiona had reserved us a spot at an inn overlooking the main street. Before dawn, she dragged me out of bed to wait for the Hale Legion's return. I leaned by the window. A young man on horseback below seemed to sense my gaze and looked up. "Gwen! Gwen!" Fiona shook my arm excitedly. "Second brother is looking at you. All those girls are throwing sachets at him. Hurry, throw one too." I didn't bring. Before I could finish, she shoved 7 or 8 sachets into my hands. I gave her an exasperated look, then tossed one toward Adrian. My aim and strength were both off. The sachet was about to fall into the crowd when he flicked his whip and hooked it back into his hand. He looked up, ready to smile at me, only to be punched in the arm by his elder brother. Second brother tried to show off and got scolded. Fiona giggled, hanging off my arm and laughing so hard she almost bent double. When the troops passed, we returned to the estate. Fiona chirped around Grandmadam Hale, and Evelyn like a happy little sparrow, describing every moment she'd seen. Grandmadam Hale smiled. "So did you see your future husband today?" "I did. He was at the very end." Fiona grinned. "Good thing he could still sit a horse. Otherwise I wouldn't have seen him at all." She had been engaged to one of General Hale's officers. She would leave the household in summer. Evelyn rose to prepare a welcome feast for the men returning from war. I offered to help, but she pushed me away. "Gwen, go change into something new." I looked down at my clothes, not seeing what was wrong. She sighed and told one of the maids to escort me back. The maid whispered something to my own girls. They opened my chests and dug around until they found my wedding gown. One dressed me, another did my hair and makeup. They fussed over me for a full hour until I looked exactly as I had on the day I left my father's house. Last of all, they put a round fan in my hand. Then they all stepped back, bowed, and quietly withdrew. A moment later, a pair of black boots stopped in front of me. "Gwen," he said, "I'm back." 3 days later, the Hales hosted a grand banquet and invited friends and relatives from every branch of the family, as my elder sister Yvonne naturally received an invitation. The moment I saw her sweep in, glowing, with Ian and the Mercer girl behind her, I knew Ian had managed to dig up and burn the seed of doubt I'd planted in her heart. "Gwen, so what if Adrian Hale survived?" she said, stopping me where no one else could hear. "He's nothing but a military man." She smiled triumphantly. "The spring examinations have been posted. Ian placed first in the provincial exam, and I'm already carrying his child." I paused for a heartbeat. She noticed my reaction and stroked her belly. "He refused to touch you, but don't think he's the same with me. Gwen Arden, this life will be mine. I will be the one who prospers." I looked at her with nothing but pity. In the last life, when I walked in on them, the one thing I was grateful for was that he had never touched me. I had never borne him a child. This time, to erase Yvonne's suspicions, Ian had slept with her. I glanced across the room at the Mercer girl, her hair pinned with jewels worth a small fortune. For once, I didn't argue. I turned and walked away. 9 months later, Yvonne bore a son. That same month, Ian was appointed imperial lecturer. Lady Arden asked me to attend the full-month celebration and made it clear she expected a generous gift. In front of her, I said calmly to my maid, "Ask my sister-in-law Evelyn to prepare a gift for me according to proper custom." Lady Arden glared at me. "You." "Don't worry, mother," I cut in with a smile. "Even a gift prepared by the book won't be shabby. The general's estate is wealthy after all. Those are your own words." She was furious but had nothing to say. After all, when the emperor rewarded those who had saved the realm, he not only made Nora an imperial merchant, he also granted me the title of county lady. Grandmadam Hale had gone to the palace herself to request it for me. Lady Arden could scold her concubine-born daughter however she liked, but she could no longer treat a titled lady with open disrespect. I didn't expect him to make a scene at the full-month banquet, and right in front of Lady Arden and me. Yvonne was still cradling her son and showing him off to me when the powdered young man burst into the inner room and fell to his knees at the side of the bed. The maids panicked. Yvonne snapped, "Ian, how dare you force your way into my chambers? What are you doing here?" She had clearly reached the limit of her patience with Ian's cousin. In the last life, I had been furious too. Ian's mother and sister were one thing, but why did I have to support a male cousin as well? Ian spent more money on Ian than he ever did on his own sister. It wasn't until that filthy scene slapped me across the face like a hand that I finally understood why. All his vows, never another woman as long as I live, all my love and respect are yours, had been lies. Cousin, please, Ian sobbed, more fragile, more pitiable than Yvonne herself. Let your cousin go. You already have a child. He has given you that. Can't you give him back to me now? Yvonne stared at him. What do you mean? Lady Arden reacted faster. She slapped him hard. Madman, guards, drag him out. Cousin, stop, Yvonne screamed. Stop. What are you saying? What do you mean? Lady Arden grabbed her in a panic. Yvonne, you mustn't get worked up. He's clearly gone mad. I'll have him thrown out at once. Ian. Yvonne didn't hear her at all. Nearly 4 months of coldness, my pointed words, Ian's tenderness toward Ian, all of it lined up in her mind at once. Explain yourself, Ian. By the time Ian arrived, the inner room was chaos. Several maids were holding Ian down. Yvonne was clawing at him with all her strength. Lady Arden was trying desperately to pull her away, begging her not to get too upset. I had stepped as far back as I could, to the doorway. Gwen? Adrian had come along when he heard there was trouble, using his status as Ian's brother-in-law to enter the inner courtyard. He pulled me behind him at once. Are you hurt? What happened? When I shook my head, he glanced into the room, then quickly looked back at me, horrified. Is that a man they're fighting with? I sighed and tugged him toward the door. You saw correctly. I doubt this full-month celebration will continue. Let's go home. After this, I thought Yvonne would surely divorce Ian. She was not like me. She was legitimate born, with a mother and brother to protect her. Even if she returned home, her life would not be unbearable. But just like in the last life, her request was rejected. Ian Mercer placed first in all 3 exams, Father snapped. He is already an imperial lecturer. His future is limitless. Lady Arden loved her daughter. She hesitated. Still, husband, perhaps we should let her go this time. Ian is so... You know nothing, Father roared. Soft-hearted woman. The second prince's wife's family wants to tie their line to House Mercer. Ian has caught the second prince's eye. If we, even for our son's sake, we cannot break this marriage. At the mention of her son, Lady Arden finally fell silent. She turned to comfort Yvonne instead. Daughter, Ian already promised to send Ian far away. You've given birth to his rightful heir. No one can shake your place. Yvonne was trembling with rage. Mother, Ian, don't you think he's filthy? Enough. Just as before, Father slapped her across the face. Even if you die, you will die in House Mercer. Then he turned to me, who had been summoned back especially for this. Gwen, talk some sense into your sister. Tell her to be as understanding as you. When they left, the room finally went quiet. Yvonne sat there, motionless, for a long time. Then she began to laugh. Don't you think I'm pathetic, Gwen? She asked. I made different choices this time, so why have I still ended up here? I had no answer for her. In the last life, I also discovered the truth only after Ian was made imperial lecturer. I was luckier than she was, and also less lucky. Lucky because he never touched me, not once, until the day I died. Unlucky because when I finally learned the truth, I had no one to tell. Yvonne still had Lady Arden to scheme for her. I had no one. Aunt Lynn was gone. I barely saw my mother's family. The Mercers were wolves and tigers. My mother-in-law was cruel. My sister-in-law thought only of how to strip me of money. Ian cared about appearances. He would not openly spend my dowry, but he did nothing when his mother and sister humiliated me, until they had picked my meager dowry clean. 3 years after I married in, it was all gone. When I walked in on Ian, my first feeling was not heartbreak. It was relief. I had no way out, not like Yvonne. So I decided to drag the Mercers to hell with me. I even planned how to poison them. But 2 days before I could act, Lady Arden forced me to visit Yvonne at the general's estate. Yvonne killed me and saved me. So I told her, for the first time since my rebirth, a truth from my heart. Yvonne, the Mercer family is not a good place to end up. Then I turned to leave. Behind me, she began to cry and laugh all at once. Why didn't you tell me sooner? You must be so pleased, Gwen. Everything you have now was taken from me. I won't let you keep it. Yvonne went back to Ian. When I heard, I felt nothing at all. This was the path she had chosen. Both times, she had chosen first. Back at the Mercers, she not only reconciled with Ian, She also bought the Mercer girl piles of jewelry and took her to every noble banquet she could. Soon the girl was engaged to the younger brother of the second prince's wife. I don't know what Yvonne told father, but she pulled a large sum out of House Arden to fund the girl's dowry, sending her off in grand style. Then Ian was promoted to Doctor of the Imperial Academy, jumping 3 ranks in one go. Yvonne became the darling of aristocratic ladies. Doctor of the Imperial Academy wasn't the highest post, but for a man of his age, he was impressive. Drunk on her own success, Yvonne even tried to make me serve her tea in front of the crown princess. The crown princess laughed coldly and set her cup down hard. "And who are you," she said, "to demand that my cousin by marriage pour your tea?" Yvonne went white. Only then did she remember that the crown prince's birth mother had been Adrian's aunt, the late Empress Zhao, a daughter of the Hale family. She dropped to her knees at once to beg forgiveness. But the crown princess had long been displeased with the second prince's faction. She seized the chance. Yvonne was punished to kneel in the garden, holding a full teacup. For a titled lady, it was a humiliation worse than death. She knelt for half an hour. When the maids finally helped her up, she limped away. Before she left, her resentful gaze locked onto me. I asked her if she was glowering at the wrong person. She sneered. "Enjoy it while you can, Gwen Arden. It won't last." I soon understood what she meant. When trouble broke out at the border again, the Hale Legion marched out. The second prince's men took the chance to seize the gates. They rounded up the families of military officers and dragged us into the palace, planning to force the emperor's hand. Yvonne appeared in front of me. She wore rich silks. The jewels in her hair and on her hands glittered with wealth. "See, little sister," she said. "The winner is still me." Before she came in, I had been sitting with my eyes closed, resting. Under the cover of my wide sleeves, I had already cut the ropes on my wrists with the dagger Adrian had given me and passed it along the line to Fiona. When I heard Yvonne's voice, I opened my eyes and looked at her. "Sister." I finally asked the question I had never been able to understand. "Why are you always clinging to me? Whether I live well or badly has nothing to do with how your life turns out." Yvonne froze for a second. "Who says it doesn't?" she spat. "Your concubine born, you living better than me, is the biggest mistake of all." "So that's it," I said, closing my eyes again. There was nothing more to say between us. Yvonne grew angry, thinking I was looking down on her. "What's that supposed to mean? You think someone is coming to save you? The palace is full of the second prince's men. When he takes the throne and Ian becomes a marquise and prime minister, I will be a first-rank lady." I didn't answer. Fiona, however, could not hold back. "You're very loud for a future first-rank lady," she said dryly. "You." Yvonne started to snap back, but the clash of weapons rang out from outside. She blinked, then strode to the door, yanked it open, and dragged a trembling maid inside. "What's happening?" "The second prince has forced the throne," the maid stammered. He killed his majesty." Yvonne's lips curled into a smile, but before the smile could settle, the maid went on. "The Hale Legion has entered the palace to restore order. They're hunting down the traitors now." Yvonne went rigid. "That's impossible. The Hale forces have already been sent out of the city." "Against those southern tribes?" Fiona said, snapping her broken ropes and brushing dust from her skirt. "My brother could crush them at 17. What made you think they could keep him busy now?" Yvonne shook her head. No, she clutched at her hair, unable to accept it. "2 lives, and I still lose to you? I won't accept it. I won't." I sat on the floor and watched her quietly. "I want to choose again," she whispered. She staggered toward me. When she reached me, she suddenly pulled out a dagger and raised it high. "I'll choose again. Next time, I won't choose wrong." I lifted my own hand. Before her blade could fall, my dagger pinned her palm to the wooden pillar. Yvonne screamed. I looked at her calmly. "Sister, after I married into the general's estate, I learned there were many things worth studying in this world. My mother used to say, the more skills you have, the less life can press you down. So I learned to manage a household, to ride, to shoot, and I let Adrian teach me a little sword work. I'm not very good at it, don't laugh." I took the handkerchief Fiona passed me and wiped the blood from my fingers. Then I walked out without looking back. I knew this would be the last time I ever saw Yvonne Arden. Everything had begun with her. It would end with me. Sister, this time, I am the one who chooses. After the crown prince took the throne, the second prince's faction was purged. Ian Mercer was executed. His family was exiled. I didn't go to watch Yvonne being led out of the city. When father lost his post and came to the general's estate to ask for my protection, I refused to see him as well. One day, I happened to return just as he stood outside the red gates, shouting that I was unfilial because I wouldn't receive him. I glanced at the jade Buddha in the carriage, then stopped Adrian when he moved to get down and argue with him. "Take the back gate," I told the driver. Adrian was unhappy. "Gwen, how can you let him smear your name like that?" "He was stripped of office for colluding with the second prince," I said calmly. "If I meet him, they'll call me disloyal. If I refuse to meet him, they'll call me unfilial. Either way, they'll find fault. So why bother?" He still looked upset. I hooked his little finger with mine and smiled. "My husband is the famed general of the Cloud Banner. Who would dare speak against me?" The tips of his ears turned red at once. "You're right," he muttered. "I'll just have to work harder, so His Majesty will grant you the title of first-rank lady." "All right," I said, laughing. "I'll be counting on you." When we stepped down from the carriage, we ran into Fiona. She greeted Adrian, then happily took my arm and started chattering about the latest gossip in Silvercrest, leaving Adrian behind in 2 steps. "Can you not carry your wife off with you?" Adrian grumbled at his brother-in-law. His brother-in-law only smiled helplessly. "After you, General." The main hall of Cloud Hall Pavilion was already full. As the matron of the clan, Evelyn stood at the front, welcoming guests. My nephew and niece rushed up to show me the lotus flowers they had painted for summer. Inside, Fiona finally released me so Adrian and I could present our birthday gift. We knelt together and bowed to Grandmadam Hale, her face serene and kind. "Grandmother," we said, "may you live as long as the pine and the crane."